Hello and welcome to today's podcast. We're joined here by a very special guest, the CEO of Ambrosus, Angel Versetti. Angel, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure.
In today's episode, we're going to do a deep dive of Ambrosus. We'll take a look at the token economics, future expansion plans, hiring process, and much more. But firstly, for those who are new to the project, in a few words, what is Ambrosus and what does it aim to achieve?
Yes, Ambrosus is aiming to build a backbone for the global supply chains and specifically to assure quality, safety, and origin of products. We focus on food and pharmaceuticals as these are the life essential products that go into our bodies, we consume them, they directly influence our health. So these felt to be the most important part to start with. But we're also gradually looking into other industries such as high-value products as well as chemical and commodities. And what we do is we build the core protocol, which is at the heart of it a blockchain with a specific, basically APIs to satisfy the needs of the supply chains. And then on top of this blockchain, there are a variety of the tools and apps that different users, stakeholders in the supply chain or corporates could use for their needs.
Okay. So obviously there's a lot of integrity behind what you're doing. So excellent use of blockchain and real world applications, which is amazing. But what we want to know, what we're going to touch on now, is the story behind the inception of Ambrosus. So how did the vision come to be born?
So we just, I used to work at the United Nations and my latest stint there was at the Trade and Investment Department. And I basically started looking at the issues of trade, and one of the basic barriers to trade is always quality of product. It's number one excuse that is used by almost every country in the world, especially the developed markets such as the EU, the UK, the USA, which is the products cannot be imported in our countries because their quality or origins cannot be proved or satisfied. And I started looking into how these barriers to trade affect the development of nations in Asia. At that time, I was stationed in Bangkok, in Thailand. And this is one of the basic impediments to development is that these countries can produce products which are high quality, but they cannot prove that the shrimps really came from that particular part or that these products we're exporting satisfy the needs. And then I started looking at, what solutions there could be to these issues, and I stumbled upon blockchain. I've always been interested in different technologies, so I was looking more at the AI. And then I looked at the blockchain. I discovered Ethereum, I discovered Bitcoin blockchain and a few others, and I saw that maybe that aspect with this, basic value proposition of immutability and the ultimate truth, if it could help those developing countries actually improve. And I was working on some small projects in Asia, seeing how the technology could improve livelihood of entrepreneurs. So I made a kind of a project proposal of how small hubs could emerge in those developing countries that could make use of technologies to improve their trade positions. And then over time, it became something more of a project proposal. I was then at some point invited to the Vatican, and I presented this project proposal to the Pope. It was some kind of a youth leadership summit, but was attended by the Pope. So ultimately, everybody could present their cool ideas to him. And then in the end, I decided to actually shape it into something of a startup. And I started, developing this concept of, what industry should we tackle first? Why? And then, as we discussed in Vatican and a few other places later on, we tried to see what areas we should start with, and that's how the notion of what impacts our health most. It's food and medicine that we consume, and from then on, I just started kind of developing business models around it, trying to play around with the notion of blockchain, and then I just started working with other collaborators. We started working with that. I met Dr. Stefan Meyer at one of the conferences, who was a food scientist. So I could see that here, my vision of what could be done could be combined with his deep knowledge and expertise in the food industry. And that's the two of us started the project, and then it became a snowball effect.
Yeah. So it's really got a story behind it.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you could say it's probably the only project that's got backing from wholly investing from the Pope. So.
Well, I cannot claim to have specific backing, but for sure it was well received, and actually this good feedback that we received from this Pontifical Academy of Arts and Sciences is called, it definitely was useful to us and kind of became the launching platform for the project.
So is there anything or anyone that is specific motivation behind what you do? So obviously you have a great story, but was there a person or something that happened that really motivated you to really put your all into Ambrosus?
I mean, in general, I think it's not a specific thing, but ever since I kind of left the university, the reason why I went to the UN is that I wanted to make the world a better place. Mm-hmm. And I had some offers from some banks, from Google, from some other top companies. They come work for us, and they offered good money, good packages. And I was very lefty at that stage, I guess. So I said, screw these corporations, screw these investment banks. I'm going to go to Asia and work for the UN. I was unpaid actually initially for a long time. I was unpaid in Switzerland, and I was unpaid in Thailand. So I always had to kind of hustle a bit to earn money. But overall, I said, okay, here I'm going to make a difference. And then, of course, I've worked in a few departments of the UN, and I've discovered it's a gigantic bureaucratic mess. And it's actually not that easy to change the world being at the UN itself. I noticed how a lot of people who were smart or dedicated actually maybe used a couple of years of their experience at the UN, and they would leave, they would found their own NGOs, or found their own social enterprises, or would join something else, because it's very difficult for such a huge organization with literally every country in the world being a member in it to do anything at any reasonable speed. And because you have to satisfy the interests of everybody, of course, you cannot make any decision that would move away from the perfect neutrality, even though the UN is not perfectly neutral anyway, but they have to have this thing. And there was one physicist who said, well, if you have some kind of a ball to which you apply forces from multiple directions, and they're all going in the diverging kind of directions as well, the arrows, the ball will remain in the same place. Mm-hmm. So you apply a lot of force to it, but the net total value is zero. So I think the UN, has a long way to go to improve on that front. So after some time of trying to kind of launch a few projects from within and so on, I just said, I'm just going to leave and do something of my own. So overall but the desire to do something that could improve, move us further towards a better world, I guess that was more or less the constant that was flowing through this. And that's part of the integral part of the DNA of Ambrosus, is that in the end, our mission is to make the supply chain of food and pharma better. And we're trying our best to actually follow that mission. Although, of course, when you really think of it, a lot of actors we work with are maybe the very obstacle to that mission. So that's an interesting challenge.
Mm-hmm. So you left the UN and you had your vision in mind of creating Ambrosus, pushing this project, and you assembled your superstar team. As we know, Ambrosus has a lot of very intelligent people with extensive CVs. How would you say your leadership style is when you're working with such distinguished people and bringing them all together?
Yeah, it's, that's the whole point, that my goal was from the beginning to bring a lot of people who are smarter or more experienced or have better connections than I do. So I guess every single core person I've brought on board, they're much stronger than myself. And that's the whole point of making sure that the team, as a team, we're aligned for the same mission. But then within the team, it's basically we're all working as equals. So everybody can contribute, everybody can propose something, and so on. So the style over there is just it's sometimes challenging, obviously, because at times you need to be a bit more kind of pushy with people and so on. And it's, of course, you do become a little bit kind of, what's the proper word to use here? A bit cautious about pushing the person who might be a superstar in the whole field. But at the same time, you say, well, we've got to deliver on these things. You're great. And, we have a big aura of awesomeness around you, but we have a deadline. And sometimes these things are a bit tough, especially when it's somebody who might be a lot older than you or a lot more experienced. And they're trying to say, well, you're just a young smart ass. You're telling me how to do things. You say, well, you're the smarter one, but we need to get this done. There are sometimes tough things, but overall, as long as we overcome them together, it's fine. But then overall, just from the team, I expect them to be kind of highly performing people. So we've had some people who left Ambrosus for that reason, some people who may complain, but most people enjoy it. So actually, the world is always focusing a bit on the negatives. But the vast majority of people enjoy this kind of challenging environment. And we also play this thing that, you work hard and you win big. So everybody has an incentive package number, for instance. Everybody's kind of motivated to make sure that, we do build a valuable network. Everybody has creative freedom, for instance. We don't have a project proposal that is bad. Maybe it needs to be improved and so on. But if anybody has an interesting proposal to make, say, that's what I propose, that's how we're going to do this, this is how it's going to help Ambrosus, that's what I need. We never say no at this stage. So it's an environment that a lot of people really like. But for sure, we do want to be highly successful, so we're running full speed on full engines.
Seems like a challenge to balance, like you said, fostering that environment where people want to be innovative and have ideas, but also to really narrow down the focus and to keep everything on track moving forward. Would you say that yourself, in certain situations, you had to be quite forceful and direct in moving things along?
Yes, very often. For example, just to give a tiny example, but it's very illustrative. Today we launched a new website.
Yeah,
and actually, it's already been delayed by an embarrassingly long time, which made me extremely angry. I mean, people think I'm angry when I'm posting something on Reddit or LinkedIn. I'm angry behind the doors. So I'm just, quietly angry there. And I said, and it's been, there's been a lot of things that happened. We first had a CMO who, had hired one development team. I looked at their designs and said, that's not what I want. Then we got other designers and so all these, typical things. And then I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I said that the website is our face. And I want that website to be perfect, not these, the molecule-looking things that everybody has, which every single designer is offering to you. I said no. In the end, I literally had to draw things and say we researched a lot of themes. We looked at what the community have been making with the stickers, which were kind of retro-futuristic, which is a great style. And actually that inspired our website style. So the community influenced that part too. But not because we're just there to please the community, but because they found out something great, which none of our designers could find. I said, take these stickers, take this style, and make it as a reference point. And then we had to research. I researched through some spaceships and so on. I found the one that's an orbital station that looked similarly to the eye. And we upgraded it, and that became the main thing on the website. So there's a lot of thought that went into this. But right now, and the website should have been launched, this one in April or something, or 31st of March, to be more precise. But then the little things were not there, And I said, well, you cannot have the website out without the little things, or the cube was not moving, so all these things. So I was quite particular about these things, and they just asked, why is so? You're like chief designer. I say, well, it's just got to be good. I'm not the chief designer. It's just I have a certain vision. So anyway, and yesterday they said it was a nearly perfect version and was challenging to make it good on a mobile and on the laptop. Apparently, mobile. Everybody knows, of course, mobiles are less performant, but I wanted to make sure that it looks good on the mobile as well. So it didn't as of last night. And we also scheduled the newsletter for today. And I said, guys, I don't care. At 9 o'clock, actually 8 o'clock London time in the morning, the newsletter goes out saying, we've launched a new website, welcome. If it's not going to get done, we're all going to get embarrassed. I, for sure, but I'm already embarrassed for weeks because we're delayed. But you are not. You're going to be in that mess. And some of the people said, how can you cancel this newsletter? But I just locked it up. I said, well, good luck. It's already scheduled. It's going out. So either fix this or you're all going to be in trouble. And guess what? The website was fine tonight. So you do have to do things that some people will find unpopular or radical or pushy. But without this, you cannot do this stuff. And actually, I'm discovering that I should be more often like this. So again, people kind of, of course, it's easy to compare what's on the outside and what's inside. Inside, I've been a bit more forgiving and understanding to things, but these days you're saying, guys, okay, fun is over. We've got to get better because there are a lot of things that are not running as well as they could be for different reasons. Some of them are valid, some of them are excuses, but so the answer to the question is yes, you do have to be like that, and I guess you should actually learn how to do this properly, but of course at the same time without pushing people over the edge. So that's, again, another kind of fine balance to maintain.
Definitely. I think it's definitely a nuanced approach you have to take. But often this is the way that things really get done. And when you're trying to change the world and make the world a better place, you've got to be a little bit more, not necessarily ruthless, but on track and on focus to keep everyone with you. Just a quick comment on, as you're saying, the difference between looking inside and from the outside in. Just a quick comment on some online criticism that there's been that perhaps your style and from your comments on Reddit haven't maybe been something that would match up to, for example, the comments of a polished CEO of a FTSE 100 company, for example.
Mm-hmm.
How would you respond to those such comments?
Well, multiple things I could say. First, I made kind of a self-made exile out of Reddit. I said, guys, the last question was so stupid, I'm out of here. And so, yeah, I mean, it's true I have, too little patience, I guess, for that. But then if you look deeper, sometimes I really wonder, is this person genuinely so kind of, what's the nicer word to use, but is it a real question, or is it just really somebody who was sent? Because there are these people who come from other projects. Oh, I wanted to ask, what about this and that? And the question has been answered a million times, but it's a question with kind of a negative connotation. Yeah. And then they disturb other members of the community and they create a ruckus, they create a scandal. This is a very nice, and having worked in politics a lot, I know that's a very effective method. It works. And we can see with Brexit, we can see with Trump, we can see many other examples how people shouting nonsense, even if it's pure nonsense, can actually, change the outcome of a major election. So same thing here, and it's done a lot because in the crypto projects, despite all the, people like to say it's a common narrative, oh, we're all collaborating, blah, blah, blah. It's not true at all. This notion that we're all collaborating, some projects do collaborate. So within Ethereum ecosystem, you definitely see, a big cross-pollination of projects. But there is also, between many projects, there is nearly like a tribal war going on, and there is no need to pretend by some people that everybody's holding hands together. Projects do actively work, on getting their piece of the pie or fighting for the same corporates to take their blockchain, because it's not very clear, who is going to be the winner, or whether it's going to be winner takes all. And whether it's going to be like the war of formats, when there was, Blu-ray versus high definition DVD or whatever the name was, the other thing nobody remembers, or Betamax versus VHS, nobody knows the losers. And this is probably what's going on with blockchain these days. There are battle of standards. The world will not need hundreds of blockchains in the future. And like some people say that interoperability for sure, but there won't be 1,000 blockchains operating in the world 5 years down the road. So it's important. Of course, you don't spend all your attention on just fighting. You focus on creating the bigger positive value, but you do have to mind these things. And another aspect is, of course, me personally, I've always been actually a public spokesman at the UN and elsewhere. They let me speak on stage because they know that guy cannot keep his mouth shut. And I think that's why they use me as a bit of a pawn to prove to the people, see, at the UN, we even tolerate guys like this. And I was always criticizing. At the UN, whilst I was a project lead and a consultant, I led a whistleblower campaign against the removal of Mr. Kompas, Anders Kompas, who was the chief UN on human rights, who discovered that the UN-sanctioned peacekeepers were raping children in Central Africa in exchange for food that they were supposed to give to them for free. And this was just hushed and covered up entirely. And that guy was the only one who told the media about this. And they actually ended up with him being prosecuted. And I was making a lot of noise about that. And actually people said, you're going to lose your job and so on. I said, I'll be happy to lose my job if this organization is fine with that crap. So sometimes, and similarly in the blockchain space, there is so much nonsense. There is so much paid narrative, paid media. Some people whom I will not name publicly, they're nothing more than a reflection of all the headlines and all the titles of every single article written by a major crypto newspaper or a mainstream newspaper that have a crypto section. So you say, man, what's your opinion? You're a big influencer with, tens or sometimes hundreds of thousands of subscribers. You're just the sum total of all these newspaper headlines. What's your opinion? But they have no opinion and they don't care. They only care about being an influencer, collecting their money from ICOs who put them as advisors or otherwise. But the problem is that a lot of thousands of new people or millions of new people who are just learning about the blockchain, they're going to say, I want to learn about blockchain. oh, hey, this guy is Mr. Blockchain from this country, or that guy is famous, let me follow him, and then they're going to be reading all the trash this person is feeding them, and then these people will learn the crap. And every now and then I get frustrated and I call out on bullshit, and it's probably damaging to some extent. Although I do think that people should speak their mind more often, because then the world will also be a better place. Yeah. So I'll be more careful with that, of course, because I realize sometimes you make a statement and it's reflected in the markets, etc. So I'll have to take a more balanced approach. But then again, if I look at the communications of Vitalik, for instance, I like the way that he's of course at a place that is pretty high, but actually it's not a place which guarantees you to be there forever. But I'm happy that, as he wrote, I don't mind damaging my social capital by speaking out or speaking the truth. And he made some posts that were controversial, but I think that's very valuable to bring, another narrative to this clogged communications channel, and especially in the crypto space. It's painful to see that, because the amount of nonsense is just overwhelming, and it makes you angry when you understand how things actually work, and that a lot of stuff that is considered to be respectable, and people who are speakers at conferences or speakers on large TV channels and so on, where they only know the talking points that are just there to make money, but nothing about truth.
I mean, just before we move on, I have to say, as a member of the community myself, I think it's actually refreshing to see someone with integrity who's willing to actually speak out in amongst all the noise and all the trash that goes on. I think we need more of that, definitely.
Yeah, 100%. Following on from what Zafar said, you're clearly a very honest person, and that style is clearly working for you since you've hired Stephen Concota, huge name, got so many brands behind him, Condé Nast, CMO Versace. So we were just wondering, how did that come about? Was there anything that you specifically did to get him on board? And how was the hiring process for you?
Well, we have also known for quite some time that we're lacking the person on the marketing side. But I said that for every senior position we have at Ambrosus, we will make sure that it's properly vetted. And I have an extremely high bar for people in general. So I put it out there, and we didn't have anybody who would be even close to that one. And, some people are saying, oh, do it. But of course, I was constantly on the lookout. I attended some marketing-oriented conferences, made some calls to some people, had to tell headhunters goodbye because I'm usually not interested in their services. But again, there's nothing kind of romantic behind it, just a lot of searching, a lot of talking, a lot of interviewing. And then finally, of course, we came across Stephen, who actually just happened to apply to our opening himself. I was at first like, okay, is that a scam, or it's a bit suspicious? Well, why is this? But then I checked out, and we do our research and due diligence. Oh, the guy is real, and he's from there. So okay, we are probably great if the guy of this caliber just applied on our LinkedIn job offering, actually. And then we talked to him. I introduced him the idea. I said, well, how come? He says, I've read about this, and I've seen your people, I've seen your team, I've seen what you stand for and what you're aiming to do. And then we met in person, and he met the team, and he saw what we have behind the curtains, kind of all the ongoing partnerships, all the collaborations. So that's also one of our challenges, that a lot of stuff we have is under different NDAs. This guy, of course, he saw, the scale and nature of collaborations we have with large corporates, and he saw that it's not just a nice, mission, a nice statement that we're making and a bunch of professors and smart people, but actually that we do have industrial activities and pilots going on, and that this thing can actually be a big thing in the future. Yeah. And after he attended a couple of our meetings with large corporates, he was blown away. He said, wow, guys, I thought it would be good, but because actually everybody really likes not only what we propose, but how we deliver this. And this is, I guess, all of these things in combination. I think it's a question for Stephen, obviously, for why, but I think he actually answered that one in Milan, maybe, but I'm not sure, or in Berlin. But so he just saw that we are real people who actually work on something meaningful and have successful results. And
you just want to make a change.
Yeah, and I was quite happy as well. I said, well, Stephen, of course, you are the person I'll be very happy to have on board. And you also are a rock star in your own field. I'm trying to make sure that at the leadership roles, we have everybody who actually has big experience. And it's not just because, they have big titles, because we've also had a lot of people with big titles who, after interviewing, just say, okay, I don't know why that person has a big title. But the guy helped launch. He actually was part of the launching team of Cartoon Network, and he made it into one of the most popular TV channels. So I said, well, I mean, you clearly know how to engage, kind of make a massively popular product. And in the end, Ambrosus, interestingly, as a solution, it's oriented to the corporates, but the ultimate use would also need to come from the customers. And also, as we grow our network, and as the network has more and more different dApps and solutions, some of them will be consumer oriented. So we will also need help of him to make sure that there is a proper message to the consumers about why Ambrosus is needed.
Yeah, he's got a lot behind his belt. He's very smart. He knows what he's doing. So are you looking to utilize his expertise and experience in commodities and luxuries, the initiatives in that?
For sure. I mean, especially in the luxury market, that's one of the most obvious things because he's worked at Escada and at Versace and a few other brands which are kind of world leading. And he also noted that they care a lot about the origins of their materials for clothes, or whether they were sustainably sourced, or any such aspects which can be actually proven using the same technological platform. And that's the great thing about Ambrosus. We are, the platform itself is industry agnostic. We're applying it to food and pharma, but the platform can be applied to any supply chain in general. So we're actually, we've got right now a couple of people who also have prior expertise in that field, and they're just looking to see how traceability of materials, which we've done already for food and pharma, how it could be applied in the apparel sector.
Just touching on that, we can actually just talk about the community. I know you're looking to engage the community and improve engagement. Have you got any ideas in terms of that, such as building dApps? Because I know you're doing a lot in terms of hosting meetups. So how do you see that relationship going?
We definitely, I mean, that's one of the key things that is up to Steven. I mean, I'm also giving the inputs I can, of course, but I have to juggle too many balls these days, is how we could improve the engagement of the community, because clearly we've got different sorts of competitions or crowdsourcing events. Our crypto economic model, for instance, we used, we basically posted some questions on Reddit and asked the community to write answers, and they gave amazing answers to the questions. So we said, some big consulting firms could not give us such smart answers as just random people on the net did. So that's important not to underestimate, not just to say community is awesome because it's a nice thing to say. I never say things that are just nice things to say. Yeah. I think our community has actually, we've already seen with website, they've contributed to the website style, they've contributed to the crypto economic model, they constantly contribute to different aspects of where we could improve and so on. So that's a nice thing. So for sure, getting more of this crowd wisdom would be great. Building of dApps, we have recently run a dApp competition whereby people had to submit a 5-minute video, long video about what they want to build and how, basic pitch, more or less. So we've got some interesting ideas. So we're talking with those people about, hey, do you want to actually build this project? We know we can use some financing. We can hire you, and depending on what the person wants, if they want to be more entrepreneurial, or they just want to be essentially like an employee managing their project. Different people will have different needs. So we often kind of have this open environment where people can come and propose these things, and we want to build on that. Right now we're looking at how we can have different ambassadors. We already have community members in New York, in Russia, in Asia, so maybe we could strengthen those and turn them into some sort of Ambrosus hubs. And on other fronts, we're also looking to see how we could create some more engaging Ambrosus events, and not just a meetup where Ambrosus is presenting, not just a conference where we're speaking, although that's of course always important, but something more like an Ambrosus community event, and it could be even partially towards an entertainment or just in general community building side. And we're looking to see how we can host such an event in summer, how we can invite the active members of the community there, and see how else we can involve them. Hackathons, which are kind of a practical continuation of the dApp proposition, where you not only make a pitch, but you build something. And specifically at the intersection of IoT and blockchain, where people can just play with some hardware and play with some AmbNet and build interesting proposals and tools. And we did that in Spain, and we did that in Zurich. So we're looking to see how we can do it elsewhere. So there are a bunch of initiatives on the table. Not enough people to execute it, but now we've hired a few more people. So we had 5 people join last week. We have I think 4 more joining this week. So we're constantly getting the workforce and others. Steven has, of course, now a clear realm of anything that's kind of outward communication related, and others have also their proposals. And the tech team is looking at, Vlad on the product side is looking how to make these SDKs as accessible as possible for large amount of people. Just saying, okay, I'm building for iOS. How could I use embedded tools to build for iOS, for iPhone users, and so on? So I think this stuff is going to release by the end of this month, all three SDKs, the web, Android, and iOS.
Moving on now to the token economics, or Ambronomics, as they're called. This subject actually had a lot of engagement from the community. We had a lot of community questions posted about this. First off, could you explain the process of converting fiat money to Amber tokens? So when a company pays you for bundles, that will be, I assume, they'll be paying fiat currency. How will that then be converted to Ambrosus tokens?
So the mechanisms are currently explored in practice because, again, it's not a technical challenge, it's just a purely regulatory challenge. When we work with companies, it makes a lot more sense for them when we present them the costs running in dollars. That's why the crypto economic update would put $10 to signify just the cost per bundle of storage of data. But the actual process, either they could actually purchase the tokens on a pay-as-you-go model, whereby, they will still pay $10, but whatever the prevalent rate for the token is at the time of the transaction, it could be converted. We will see if we just charge them upfront for a number of weeks or months, because that's the first basic pricing model. We're not negotiating with companies, but they just pay actually for a year's worth of service. Because most of these companies want kind of long-term commitment. We're talking about even basic software for these companies. If you're talking about adoption at the whole enterprise level, it's not something they want to just try and then doesn't work out, I change to another software. They want to, stick to it for quite a long time. So they also want the pricing to be long-term, and therefore having it in fiat makes more sense. But the actual conversion, when you would pay for the transactions in Amber, most likely the practical mechanism would be that at the time of the transaction, there would be an exchange mechanism. They could either do it with Ambrosus itself, in which case it would probably require some kind of financial license to convert fiat to crypto, or who knows, Binance recently announced that they're going to have also token to fiat pairs to disconnect it, the necessity from exchanging through Bitcoin. So perhaps that's going to be a simpler solution because Binance already have a bunch of licenses, so that there could be some kind of an API and you just feed in $10, get Amber, and they go straight into the node or elsewhere. So these mechanisms, we have a few being explored, but until we actually start rolling out, it will be under development.
I think it's interesting to know. So we could actually see on Binance buy orders for tokens which have come directly from large corporations which are using Ambrosus' solution.
Could be. I think that's what Binance are driving towards, to just have more legitimate participation from institutional investors and corporates. I think that's, I'm not speaking for Binance, obviously, but the recent move to Malta and obtaining of licensing and so on, they signify that they want to also make sure that they're accessible for the stakeholders who have the certain needs for regulatory framework. And I think that's just going to be a possibility in the future, yeah.
In terms of the bundles, how much data do you anticipate will be in each bundle?
The bundle itself is similar to a small database, actually. So it's not measured in megabytes, it's measured in entries. Entries can be assets or events, and it's 10,000 of either of those per bundle. So either you can have 1,000 assets with 10 events each, or you could have 100 assets with 100 events each. As long as they multiply and you get 10,000 or less, that's a bundle.
Okay, and that solution will be both cost effective for the companies that are using the services, but also for the people running the nodes.
So I guess it reflects on both. The primary point of this is we looked at how the data is structured currently, and currently it's basically databases. So here it's a lot of our entries are just at regular intervals. They're readings from sensors, readings from different quality assessment certificates or elsewhere. So the data is constantly fed, and it's just a string of numbers and digits usually. So it's the size is more or less the same usually. It can be a bit more numbers and digits or a bit less, a bit fewer of them. But you do have 10,000 entries in this database. So it's designed with an industrial need in mind. But of course, if you look at the whole crypto economic model and how it's tailored towards the node owners, of course, it's also made in such a way that these bundled transactions also reflect positively on the nodes themselves.
And currently we have the Amnet testnet up and running at the moment, don't we?
Correct.
How many transactions are we currently seeing on there?
So we currently have a few testnets up actually, and some of them are connected through the UI that people, I think quite a lot of community members discovered it. I mean, it's neither hidden nor really properly announced, just kind of hanging there. We're testing it out. That's actually also part of another dilemma on our side. On the one hand, we want to keep things quiet until we release them. On the other hand, if we don't show any progress, people say, oh, GitHub hasn't been updated on this stuff, so therefore we open it to them to see that's stuff in progress. So right now, the UI is connected to one of the testnets that ran for a few earlier pilots, and other testnets that we have, we load them kind of one testnet for one company. So their kind of company set up a node and a few others we provide, and they just test it out how it works. Usually it's between 10 and 50,000 transactions per hour. So we work on kind of high volume products such as mass food production or mass pharmaceutical production, because we're more interested to see how it could actually apply to the industrial use cases and not just very high cost products and tracking them. We're not, a lot of companies are focused just on tracking things. Track and trace is a pretty old and well explored industry, and the margins are extremely low over there. So we're trying to focus on the industrial use cases where the margins are also really low. But if our solution brings them 1 cent saving per unit, it may sound trivial to an external observer, but if you're a company producing 100,000 units per day, then 1 cent saving per unit is a pretty nice amount for you. So we're trying to focus on these things where we can already show the value. That the blockchain is not just some fancy magical tool you can use just because everybody in your department talks about it, but because actually, hey, it saves us money. Or conversely, for some other companies who put it more on the consumer side, it can help us make more money.
And when the mainnet is up and running towards the end of the year, do you expect to have all companies on that mainnet and no more private testnets?
So the mainnet is actually launching in July. So it's not the end of the year. The end of the year is when we're launching the industrial grade network. So the company should be onboarded for the industrial one. The mainnet will be accessible both to companies and to the public. But we will spend the remainder of the year until we launch the second version, which is going to be kind of well tested, is both the consumers and the companies can use that, and on the second one, it should be all of them should converge. Yeah.
And will nodes be running for the first version, or by the second version?
So the nodes are essentially there, whether they will be accessible to stake the tokens or not. I think that's up to Vlad to see. There's currently testing with the dev team to what extent it makes sense and how many nodes should we onboard from the public net launch in July. I think his approach is to be a bit more careful and to say, okay, we're going to maybe get 30, 40 Apollo nodes and 100, 200 Hermes nodes and a bunch of Atlas nodes. So they're working out on what are the proper numbers not to overload it. We've also looked at some other blockchains, EOS, for example, and some others who are taking a very gradual approach. Actually, interestingly, until I looked at the numbers, I thought that they're letting everybody in, but actually they still have a pretty long waiting list for the node operators and so on. So we realized actually even the biggest projects don't have a super big capacity. So we're taking also the approach where we make sure it works well and make sure that it's the corporate partners who we have are satisfied with the uptime and with speed of transactions and with all of these basic fundamentals. And then once it's fine, we can start growing the network by adding more nodes.
And as you grow the network, will you see eventually there be a removal of the limit of the number of nodes, or do you think there will always be a constraint of some kind?
That's more of a philosophical question here is how many can there be in general? I think most people would, in my place, say, oh, it's ad infinitum to infinity and beyond and so on. There are only so many nodes one can add in the network meaningfully, but there would be probably a good number is tens of thousands. That's decentralized enough. Then at some point, probably adding extra ones would probably bring marginal benefits or could create scalability issues. And then we can look at, the proposals made in the Ethereum community or elsewhere about the potential scaling solutions. So overall, probably there'll be bottlenecks on the maximum number of nodes at every single stage. But hopefully, as the technology grows and as the research grows, and we learn more things, we put more theoretical proposals into practical implementations, we can find ways to increase the number of nodes participating, and ensuring the decentralization of the system.
So, just in terms of the early bottlenecks, how do you imagine that prioritization will be given to members of the community who hold enough tokens to stake for a node?
So on our side, we will see what makes the best sense for the corporate players in this field, because ultimately we do want to make sure that the uptime and the requirements they have are satisfied. Of course, we keep in mind also the fact of how the actual community reflects that. But if you think from the point of view of the community, well, if you run a node, you want to run a node that would be used extensively. So therefore, it's also their interests are perfectly represented there. They also want, I suppose, if they don't think so, well, maybe they have the wrong incentives here. The whole point of hosting a node is that you do have these industrial transactions go through, you validate them, or you can challenge the data that is not disclosed currently or otherwise participate in the network. And then for participating members, there are, of course, rewards for that. But the important thing is they do want adoption. So therefore, they're also aligned, of course, to the needs of the corporates. I guess the only difference is the time span. Is a lot of people want things now or yesterday, whereas the corporates are saying, let's take time, let's see how this works, and let's move at our pace. So there may be a time disconnect there, but I guess everybody who follows the project closely now, they can see that in the medium to long term, the alignment of interest is perfectly there. So,
just a few more questions on that. Other such projects have incentives for early node holders to encourage people to purchase nodes early, and also incentives for holding the nodes long term. Do you anticipate doing something similar?
We actually do have something similar. We're not announcing it publicly just because it's a legally tricky question about how to announce it without being kind of accused of trying to push people to buy more of the tokens and so on. So we're just working out the legal aspects on that. We do actually have the model doesn't talk about the specifics of the percentages of the transaction fees that the nodes collect. It doesn't actually mention the fact that the longer the node provides uninterrupted security, integrity, and data storage for the network, the higher the percentage of the fees they generate. And it's going to be a long-term scheme where there's probably going to be, I think the last time I proposed a thing, it was something like 28 months or something. So it's about 2.5 years. That's the period during which the percentage of transaction that can be collected by the nodes keeps increasing. So the longer you have the node up and running and the network can rely on you, the more benefits you get. So it creates also a long-term incentive for people. The more are the rewards. We're also tweaking that to see how it could apply to more junior nodes and so on. However, how would we apply that without being, the regulators coming in and saying, okay, that's just a cleverly devised kind of financial scheme or something. So we're trying to make sure that it's properly within the kind of regulatory prescriptions that are currently existing in Europe.
I think it's encouraging to hear that for early adopters and early holders of nodes that they're very much in the thoughts, and obviously you still have to juggle with the legal framework and whatnot.
I think whenever people hear something that say, "Oh, you're stupid to say that," I'm saying that because the law makes me say that.
Yeah.
If people really think about it a little bit, they'll see that obviously we have a lot of tokens on it. Yeah, I've said it many times. I don't know how many times I should say it without trying to say, "Hey guys," but we hold most tokens. We also want to make sure that we can do more with these tokens, and obviously can do more with them if people find more value in them. So we are working on that stuff, but there are some things we cannot say. So I guess that's one of the things that we'll need to work on, communicating these aspects better. But yeah, I guess just one needs to remind people about that, because once you remind them, like, okay, good, and then a few weeks later, what's happening?
Goldfish memory, somewhat. Just two very quick questions to finish up on token economics. Firstly, will the company itself be running nodes?
Yes. So especially at the early stages, the company will be running quite a lot of nodes, and then we see the gradual reduction in the overall number of nodes run by the company, and basically giving away most of them to make a fully decentralized system. The reasoning for a gradual giving up of the nodes is, well, firstly, we're building the system still, so we wouldn't want to run into a situation that the Bitcoin community has, where they have to fight a lot for any trivial or non-trivial upgrade of the protocol and so on. We want to make sure that doesn't happen with us, at least until the actual platform is up and running and it performs all of its functions and so on. So again, that's another philosophical discussion: is how much decentralization is actually too much. So here we want to make sure that there are different counterbalances, and that obviously, ultimately, as we always say, if people perceive that this is just a network that's too much run by the corporate nodes and so on, then the negativity from this perception will just result in us being branded as that's just another database. What's the point? So we're aware of that, and again, we're navigating this. Although if you look at some projects like Ripple, it hasn't really damaged them too much. They're still doing well. Again, why? Well, because they can provide. I talked to a few corporates about Ripple, and they say, I don't care how decentralized it is. What I care about is that I can send my money, and 2 minutes later, it's processed by the other bank, and they confirm it. So the corporates, and again, it's another question of to what extent is it reasonable that this success of the platform will translate into the token. That's a big discussion. I'll leave there. But at the same time, if in our case, of course, we make sure that the token is an integral part of the transactions, but we also want to make sure that we do something for the corporates. We will not just say, oh, that's blockchain, that's the future, that's smart contracts, but we'll say, hey, we improve your supply chain, we save you 20% of your money in the supply chain management, or we grow your sales by 10, 20%. And that's again, okay, that's the benefit? Good, I'm signed.
And one final question on token economics, something on the thoughts of many of the community. Obviously, as adoption increases, we'll see more companies using the solution, and that will generate more data and more bundles. But just in terms of the short term and the long term, how do you anticipate the number of bundles evolving over time?
Well, it's a question to which I can only give a PR-friendly answer. We're expecting a huge growth and so on, but that's the answer. Essentially, that right now we have pilots. A pilot project is usually one supply chain for one product, so it's 0.5% or maybe even a little bit less, 0.1% of the core of the company's total amount of goods that they produce or that they process and so on. So once you test that, and if it's successful and likely they sign you up, they say, okay, I want this system to be enterprise grade on my side, then you may have an S curve whereby you just suddenly have a lot more. So, and that's usually the trajectory of growth of most successful solutions. I don't think I've seen too many that kind of grew gradually. There is usually a bit of definitely some kind of a series maybe of events. So it's like a ladder in terms of growth. So that's what we would probably see, that there are just jumps and leaps, and then there are some periods of things being a bit more quiet. But of course, the important goal for us is to grow it long term. And Vlad, whose experience is largely on the IoT side, who's already built systems that can process millions and billions of transactions daily, he's very well in this field, so he understands how to build highly scalable solutions. And also our solutions architect, Professor Roger Wattenhofer, a few of his research publications were specifically on how to build highly scalable systems that could maybe do some kind of a data streaming or some other techniques that you can use, where you don't necessarily have to record all the transactions, which is usually the bottleneck, but you just monitor them in real time. And unless there's some kind of a black swan event or anything negative, it can fade away as long as it's positive. So there are different techniques that could be used for highly scalable solutions. And we have people who, some of them spend their entire lifetimes researching that. So their job will be also to contribute to the architecture so that the total number of these bundles and transactions just keeps going up as long as the world needs them.
And just on that estimate of a few million bundles when the solution is fully adopted, is that something you stand by? And how far into the future did you anticipate?
Millions of transactions per what? Per day?
Millions of bundles.
Yeah, millions of bundles a day. That's probably, we're talking about a year, 2 years away from now. So it's, again, hard to pinpoint it to when exactly. If you look at the proper numbers, assuming you get 5, 6 large-size companies using it for their processes, that can already exceed that. So from that perspective, even the number of the companies with whom we are currently in some stage of a pilot project or POC development and so on, if those companies sign it up, their total capacity is higher than this already. Let's take a more pessimistic scenario where some of them don't sign up, a couple of them or just 20, 30% of them sign up. You're still talking about a number that's very close to that. When it's actually running on the blockchain and properly executed on chain, I'll probably give it a year from now.
Okay, so just following on from that, you're obviously growing and expanding quite rapidly in 1 or 2 years on the bundles. You have some updates to the SDKs and you have some hubs in Ireland. So would you mind just talking to us through that, about that?
About the
updates to SDKs and the new hubs.
So the SDK, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, so Vlad is preparing them to be released by the end of this month. So all the SDKs for Android, iOS, and web developers will be there. And that's going to be our continuous task. We also have the secondary website, which is tech.ambrosus.com. And there it's a special kind of corner for developers and so on, and the resources that they need next to obviously our GitHub. So there'll be some technical instructions there, some tutorials and so on to help facilitate the learning process. And that's one of the things that actually I'm actively pushing our development team to build more of these. Is I say you don't just build solutions, you build tools to let others build solutions. We want to be this Android platform, and Android doesn't, I mean, actually they do also build apps, but their whole benefit is having the platform. We want to have the platform, and then other people could build different apps and monetize them. That's my ultimate goal in this. So therefore, actually the new hires that we have on the dev team, we're also going to announce a couple more developers, actually, I think this week, who joined us. Most of their roles are actually building these basic tools. So the SDKs will definitely increase, and different APIs to connect sensors and other tunings that were built. And on the other question concerning the different hubs, so we now have centers in Ireland and in Estonia. So these are the two, and we will make them stronger. It might be the case that they will be actually even kind of the biggest hubs. Ireland is obviously a very kind of convenient place to run a large business. You already have Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, PayPal, Twitter having their corporate headquarters over there. So Ireland already has the perfect regulatory framework in place to scale a business and to have a large operation. And also the fact that there's a lot of talent that is kind of business developers, but with a strong technical knowledge. That's the perfect combination. And then Switzerland, we have different R&D activities. And then Estonia, we have also kind of a lot of developers and so on. So the different hubs will have different purposes. We're also looking right now at we already have some activities actually in Hong Kong and in Toronto. So we're looking at maybe setting up hubs there. So Ambrosus will be actually kind of a global company. But we also want to make sure that it makes sense, because again, a certain company have recently announced, we're opening our Silicon Valley offices. I was thinking, well, okay, I mean, probably it makes sense for them. I shouldn't be just laughing about this, but it's just, I have a feeling that maybe that was just done partially to kind of please their communities, or that company is a Silicon Valley company. So from that perspective, we don't, again, follow the hype. Some people said, why is it Tallinn and Dublin and not London and Paris or Berlin? Said because it makes sense as a business. We're not there just to open an office in a fancy city. I mean, cities do have their advantage, but some thoughts went into these choices. Of course, probably we're also going to have some, I'm in London frequently also partially because we have quite a few projects going on with British companies, so we probably will have some sort of an office here anyway. But then in Dublin is just 45 minutes flight away, so it's pretty close. So yeah, we will open our offices as they make sense, and not just have a fancy address and a fancy place. But we're also constantly on the lookout for more hubs to make maybe regional developments, because in our space in particular, companies very often want to work with companies who do have some presence in the country.
Okay, you've definitely taken us through what Ambrosus is, what makes you and Ambrosus definitely different to other kind of corporate companies. Your morals are definitely right in the right place. So me and Zafar and the community have kind of more philosophical questions to ask you, just out of our own interest.
So to each other first.
Yeah.
So far on this journey, what has been the high point and what's been the low point?
I don't know about the high points. I'm the one who tries to concentrate more on fixing things that are wrong. So I can talk about quite a lot of low points. Psychologists usually give you an exercise when you're too pessimistic, and I'm for sure a pessimist, but they say, just write down all the amazing things you've achieved today or last month or throughout your life, and you'll be happier. And, if we take that approach, we have quite a few high points we can be proud of. But I don't care about that, honestly speaking, whether that's good or bad. I care about what we need still to fix.
So let's pretend you're a therapist right now. And Andrea and I are your therapists. Welcome, Angel. Take a seat, please.
Yeah.
Here's a piece of paper. What have been at least one or two of the high points?
I'm definitely happy of the team that I've built. And that's, I think, the biggest asset we have in the end is the team. So all the people who are making things happen, because a lot of people just, they don't realize, but we finished our TGE about 6 months ago. We started from scratch. For example, VeChain, they actually used to be a company for a number of years, and they did their ICO, then they did an incredible job scaling, getting all the people on board and so on. So well done for them. But I think a lot of people say, look at VeChain and so on. I say, of course, my job is maybe to overtake them or to get to their side and so on. But, and I'm not usually the one making excuses why we're not there yet. But I say, let's be real. That's an existing company that was there working this, in this space a lot. And they just saw a clever way to, hey, we can also add a blockchain and a token of that. We actually started from scratch. We're still shaping a lot of things and so on. And if you look at it from that perspective, that in 6 months what we've achieved and done, then it's a pretty high point overall. So that's the basic high point. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say a high point in itself is the rate you're growing at. You're really becoming a major player in the crypto markets in itself, and just going on from that. Is there anything that you wish you would have done differently from your journey now?
Again, the first attempt, I think. So far, we don't have things that we regret. I guess some people we engaged with, but again, you make some choices sometimes. But it's not the perfect choice. Actually, maybe it's not a great choice, but it's the least worst you can make. So again, if it's the least worst, then you don't regret it later on. But you do make some mistakes will cost you something, and then down the road, these things kind of come back at you and so on. So, but again, it's not low. It's, there was a quote that I think from The Watchman, where the guy, this Mr. Manhattan said, "I'm also a puppet. I'm just the one who can see the strings." So here it's kind of like that. You sometimes see the strings, but you're still dancing to this thing. Overall, one just has to know the basic truths of life and how things are done. They also apply in the crypto space and so on, and we're dealing with them. But there are definitely, what for me is again, it's not a particular low point, just as I described the high point. Our team is not like, that's the peak. It's just the general nicest thing we have, in my opinion. And the thing that, in my opinion, is not the nicest, or the opposite of nicest, the worst, is the fact that, there are a lot of unsavory characters in crypto in general, And we try as much as possible to stay away from them, but sometimes actually it's inevitable that you deal with them. So I hope that, and it's probably going that, oh, probably not actually. No, when you think about it, it's not going to get better. It's going to get worse because all the bankers and others are now joining this train. But anyway, I mean, at least it's going to get a little bit more organized and a little bit less reckless. So the proliferation of just outright scam is going to decrease. And I'm happy that we've managed to avoid a lot of the bad things from the regulatory perspective. Again, I think one of the things that is hard to appreciate to an external observer. They've called us a bit conservative or risk averse to the detriment of the community, this and that and that. Down the road, I mean, we already have a few things that I know some other projects that are in deep trouble for some of the more adventurous things they did. And that makes me happy that, at some point people were bashing us, you're stupid, you're losing millions of dollars. I'm not the guy who likes to lose millions of dollars. If I give them away, there's probably a reason why. So during the TG, for instance, we had to give away almost as much money as we raised to people who didn't pass the KYC. One random guy literally sent us $7 million in Ether, just like, we opened said, what is this pile of money here? And where it came from, and then some emails, just send the Amber to the same wallet. Say, who are you? Why do you throw money into the wallet without even asking and so on? We don't do it like that. It's good. And then some people call us and say, yeah, it's just some client, just nice, let's do it, it's fine. Say, not fine. It's money. What, don't you like 7 million? I say, I don't like 7 million. I don't know where it came from whom, especially when we do it all compliant way and so on. So we give it back, and then somebody say, why do you do that? Everybody's ICO is, here's the wallet, throw money in, and you make it so complicated. Well, guess what? These companies now cannot have a bank account. They are under investigation by the financial authority. They have a lot of headache. We thankfully do not, so we can actually focus on building our project and expanding and growing, knowing that we did everything in compliant way. So sometimes the laws, as long as you are certain that this is a law that's actually the way to the much bigger highs, you just stick with it no matter what, and sooner or later you'll be proven right. But at that stage, you don't really care anymore because, when people are bashing you, you're saying, oh, that's so annoying, I wish I could prove it to them. But when you do prove it to them, you just don't care. You just go further.
I think the central theme here is the integrity. It's nice to see that it pays off in the long run. So a final question from me. You've touched on your opinions on the crypto scene as a whole a few times. If you look into the future now, in 5 years and 10 years' time, where do you see this all going?
You mean the space or
Ambrosus? The space as a whole.
5, 10 years down the road, but I'm not usually good at predicting stuff at the macro level. I can predict some things at the micro level. Overall, for sure, the distributed ledger technologies and all the digital assets, well, not all, but some of the digital assets residing on them, will be an integral part of the global economy in the years to come. If I went to William Hill or Ladbrokes or any other bookmaker, if I had to make a bet on that, I would probably get 1 to 1 million, as in I would win a fraction of a penny if that turns out to be true, because it's going to be true. Clearly, blockchain is a bit like the internet. It's for sure here to stay in one form or another. However, how that will reflect on the cryptocurrencies or on the vast majority of projects that exist out there, well, it's probably going to be the same kind of cleansing that happened during the dot-com bubble. Dot-com bubble didn't kill the internet. The internet continuing to grow, to become resilient, and to get integrated into the global economy. And a lot of pets.com went bankrupt and so on. Something similar will be here. If you looked at the top 100 market cap coins 2 years ago and compare it with top 100 market cap coins today, there are, I think, just a few coins that are still there. Bitcoin, Ether, and some others, but most other coins are newcomers. And I think the same thing will be 2 years then. So not even 5, 10, but just 2 years down the road. A lot of projects that are currently there will probably no longer will be there. Because even when you do have a pile of money, if you don't manage it well, or you burn a lot of cash, by the way, so in the crypto space, everything has a ×5 price tag, whether it's a crypto conference, a crypto PR, a crypto article being related, or just anybody, IT person you hire who decides to put the word blockchain next to their CV and adds a 0 to their salary. We can see through that stuff, but a lot of people, especially when they're rushing for money, they accept crazy prices. We don't accept bad deals. And again, that's an answer to the question that some people pose. Why didn't you go to a certain event? We didn't go there because it was too expensive. So we don't go to events that are overpriced. And the sector will be more normalized. So the valuations will become more realistic. It will be just a standard process. Running an ICO will be probably as basic as running your own Kickstarter campaign. As a matter of fact, Indiegogo already allow you to launch your own ICO on an Indiegogo platform. So you already have this kind of integration, normalization of the process, and people will just see, well, it's a convenient way to raise money. It's a convenient way to govern the project because there are a lot of projects there that, there is stronger governance model, transparency, or some other benefits. So it'll just gradually get integrated as a basic tool of the industry. And a lot of people will be just using it without being in amazement. Oh, wow, I'm using the blockchain. Because are we amazed that we're using the internet today? No, we just don't care. It's just part of our lives right now. So if the new generation, for instance, is going to be born into a world where most things are running on the blockchain, they will not care. Right now, I think it attracts so much attention because it's a new thing. Everybody can participate in it by investing or buying tokens or otherwise, of course. So it suddenly have a popular. It's very popular with masses because the internet didn't allow that. Actually, the internet didn't go through that same boom of kind of the technical interest of people because there was not suddenly an open door for financial participation there. Here, it's a new cool technology, and you can be part of it. You can co-invest, and that's why most people are just suddenly reading white papers, reading the crypto journals. And whatever they want to understand it, they want to understand what they're buying, or et cetera, et cetera. But down the road, I mean, most of us are using computers. We don't know how the computers actually work. We just work with user interface with different programs, but we don't know how the processor is sending the data or processes transactions and so on. We don't care about that. The same will be with blockchain. It'll be there somewhere in the background. It, of course, will hopefully transform some of the socio-economical, maybe political relationships and so on, bring more transparency, accountability, efficiency. There are a number of potential benefits it can bring. But in the end, I think it'll just become, it's just there. So 5-10 years down the road, it'll just probably be, that's as normal as an air conditioner.
Yeah. So do you think, you mentioned the internet is kind of preventing the growth of it. Do you think like Google banning advertisements for cryptocurrency, do you think that's going to affect you in any way?
You mean us as a project? Or
just the crypto market anyway?
Yeah, well, we tried to promote an event recently through Facebook and they banned it. They banned the promotion of the event we had, so we had to find other ways to market it to people, which, I find ridiculous. And they sent us this appeal form. I filled the appeal form. I said, hey, look, we're not raising money. We're talking about the technology. It's not going to be, we are very careful anyway with what we present, but it's just going to be discussing tech.
Yeah.
We are a company whose token happens to be traded, of course, and there's no way to deny that. That's part of it, actually, a fundamental part of it. But yeah, it's true that it's currently these service providers are putting they're trying to put the crypto, trying to make things complicated for this crypto. And partially, I don't think it's the part where they are concerned about the people getting scammed because, well, Facebook didn't mind using Cambridge Analytica for a bunch of political, just manipulations they helped to do and some other things. These companies, in general, are just not about being nice. So the Google recently had a whole bunch of people quit it because they were working on some kind of AI-powered drones, military drones for the US government. So, these companies are just part of the military industrial complex anyway, or for secret services, etc. Nobody argues with that. So it's more about, well, they don't want to get sued, of course. Makes sense. If I got scammed by seeing an ad through Google, if I'm clever, or if I'm in the US and I have a good lawyer who knows how to spin the story and get me some money, sure, Google and others, probably they're trying to protect themselves against those legal issues. But the bigger thing is that this technology presents an existential threat to them, both in terms of data ownership on which all of their business models are built. You take away data ownership from most of these companies, they'll go bankrupt, they'll be useless. So, of course, it makes sense. It's just natural part of life that they're fighting this technology. I think it's too late. And I think they realize it's too late and they're trying to invest or otherwise recreate what's been done. And, if they're smart enough, they can reinvent themselves and maybe be part of this movement. So I'm not just of the opinion that, they'll kill all the dinosaurs, but it's quite realistic because, again, if you compare, I talked about how top 100 coin market cap on crypto has changed in 2 years. Well, if you look at how 10 biggest companies in the US have changed between now and 10 years ago, 9 out of 10 are different. Only General Electric, I think, is the only one that was still there in 2004 or something, and today, or 2005, whatever, 10 years ago. So only GE remained. Others are all newcomers. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon. These were not the companies that were anywhere this size 10 years ago. So actually, I think everything repeats in life more or less. So you just have to look around in other industries, and it's not going to be exactly the same, but there are for sure a lot of lessons learned, which is, I guess, why I'm doing relatively well in this space. I studied history, and a lot of people say, you didn't study tech or something. I say studying history is quite useful because it teaches us a lot of lessons, and things do repeat themselves a lot. So some of the, if you look at classical Rome or Greece, whatever, ancient civilizations, some of their fundamental problems or issues that were described in the works of that time, they're perfectly applicable today. That's why I call them timeless works. So I think it's just useful for people to look around and make their own conclusions.
Yeah. Just last question from me, touching on the fact you studied history. You're obviously an activist, been in a few protests, you're really fighting for what's right. So if crypto wasn't around, what would you be doing? Would you be working at the UN still, or doing something to change the world?
The alternative universe of the crypto weren't around. Well, my thing actually, when I was contemplating leaving the UN anyway, was to work on something in the artificial intelligence space. So that's my other interest. I don't have much time to indulge myself in that these days. Although I did attend, there was a meetup in London last week on AI in the healthcare, but again, I attended it more about to see what other technologies there are that could be maybe useful for Ambrosus, how we could integrate them. And I've met a lot of smart people there. They have a lot of doctors and so on. But partially because I just enjoy that part. And I think AI is what I would be just probably working on. So again, some other fundamental technology that will change the world. And I think it's just exciting to think about all the potential applications and the philosophical aspects of that. Are we just building our own destructor, thing that will just eat us or eat ourselves out of not necessarily being evil, but just, if AI is environmentally friendly, let's build an environmentally friendly AI that wants to protect the environment, and then it deduces what is the biggest threat to the environment and who is doing the biggest damage to the environment. It's the people. Destroy all humans. Problem solved. So there are just, it's a lot of interesting things about how how you build the, how do you make the AI. There was an interesting talk by the guy from, I forgot his last name, he's from MIT, he's Iranian by origin, but he works at MIT. He's researching AI. He did a social experiment where it was a car that couldn't stop and it would inevitably kill some people. And they did what became the largest actually. He just launched them on his website, but it became so popular, it was posted on Twitter and went viral. And millions of people participated. And, on the one part of the road, you have 3 children walking. On the other road, you have 5 adults. Or on the one street, you have 2 men who are dressed in suits. On the other street, you have a fat guy and a homeless guy. And you will have to kill somebody because you have a car that's driverless and cannot stop. The brakes are broken. And the choices that people made. And it became scary because you could see a lot of biases that people have. Let's kill the homeless guy, or let's protect the driver, even if you have to kill more people on the street and all these things. And we are right now, by creating the AI, we're literally gods because we're literally determining all the future outcomes of this system being implemented and who is literally going to live or die. We're not going to be affecting the life of that particular individual, directly, but by designing this whole system, we will literally determine who lives and who dies in the future. And I think a lot of people don't realize that when they think about the AI, and it's just, there are so many philosophical aspects there, and there are probably some questions that have no good answer. And it's an exciting, daunting, frightening, I guess, area to look at. But it's definitely there, and there's a big arms race. It's a bit like the nuclear race, nuclear bombs, and the same with AI. A lot of superpowers are, vying to create the big. Britain is very big on that actually, on creating the biggest AI because they know maybe who creates the biggest AI will dominate the world. So it's for sure I would be probably working there. And probably Ambrosus anyway will at one stage start looking, into AI in general, because it's I would say there are some projects these days who say we're blockchain and AI. I think that's too much fluff these days. Both blockchain and AI are at such an early stage. There's a lot of hype around both of them. But there is also a lot of big expectations that are too big to be realized. I mean, with AI, we have a bit more history to look back at, because AI has had a few levels of hype since the 70s and even a bit earlier. There were some early iterations. Whereas blockchain is something that's, again, if you look deeper, it's not that new, but definitely the level of hype the distributed databases have received so far is the first time ever such a big interest. But both of them will take some time to mature on their own, let alone being converged in some sense. But that will be an interesting marriage of technologies.
Yeah, definitely. Just one last question. Where do you see the future of Ambrosus maybe in 5 or 10 years? Where do you see, you mentioned AI?
Yeah, just in terms of the goal, as long as we are this backbone that assures the different aspects about the product, that's currently the vision of what it could be. So the future supply chains, which maybe 5-10 years down the road there'll be more smart cities, there'll be more supply chains, there'll be maybe self-governing or automated to a large extent. We want to be this backbone that is used for, storing and recalling the data pertaining to different products. However, if you look, right now, the new website we have launched, actually, the tagline there is decentralized networks for IoT. We're actually looking at how we could be the backbone for just the Internet of Things, more broadly speaking. So the first major application here is the supply chain. But if you look kind of in an abstract way of what exactly AmpNet is a platform that enables sensors to talk to the blockchain. So that's the core technical value proposition. It's not a kind of a mission statement, but that's at the core of what technology does. That's the fundamental building block. And if you think about it, that thing, if we do it well, if we create an efficient protocol for communication between sensors and the blockchain, it could be applied in a variety of industries way beyond supply chain. It could be applied, let's say, in energy, where you could have provably sustainable energy. I have a windmill or a solar panel, and I generate 1 megawatt or 1 gigawatt of energy, and I have a proof of process that's generated by the sensors from the solar panel. Hey, I've just produced 1 megawatt of energy. Here's a token that represents 1 megawatt of clean energy. So you sell not only energy, but tokens with it, and you can get a different price because you have different quality parameters. And it's, again, these quality differentiators is what we apply in food and pharma right now. You could also do it in energy. You could do driverless cars. You could communicate with you based on the incoming payments that they receive and so on. Again, it's going to be the communication between hardware and the decentralized database. So the big vision is having the backbone that the smart cities of the future could be powered by Ambrosus. And that's once again reflected also on the website, because we have this futuristic city into which we're diving. So that's also part of that message that we want to be this the backbone for the smart cities of the future.
Okay. Well, it's been really interesting to hear not only about Ambrosus where it is now, but also in the future where it could expand to and go on to, and really blockchain in general, really how it can influence a lot of things in the future. Are there any words or remarks you'd like to add?
No, I think the questions were quite well structured and covered all of the points that would be relevant for discussion. So well done.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. Definitely an exciting time to be in blockchain and crypto. And yeah, we'll definitely hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Well, thanks for inviting.
He will control all the world's food and pharmaceutical industries by the end of the year. Versetti.
Producer head on me like I'm Illuminati. I know that you like it.
Versetti.
My neck and my wrist is so sloppy.
My God. This man